Hello, everybody. I am Justin Crosley.
I'm Travis Campbell.
And I'm Mike Persine, and you're listening to Brew Strong.
Yeah,
Brew
you are. And I
Strong.
am just happy
Yeah.
to be filling in for my good friend Jamil Zainasheff. He's a little under the weather right now. And so we want the show to go on because we know that everyone loves their Brew Strong. And we know that Jamil likes the show to keep going on. So that's what we're doing here tonight. And I am just happy to fill in. Um, we did another show already tonight, so I don't know if you guys have changed beers, but I did want to ask what you're drinking. You got a different beer in your
Oh,
glass this
yeah.
time?
So I had that Red Hearted IPA last show and
Yeah.
the Hazy Hearted as well. I mean, I guess I had two of them. And now I'm on to DML, Delicious Miller Lite.
Delicious Miller
Light,
Lite. Oh
easy.
boy.
I have a
Hey,
brewing friend. I don't know if you heard of this place, Alibi. My buddy works, he's a brewer there. He talks about DMLs all the time. Like, what the hell's a
DML.
DML? It's like Delicious Miller Light.
Sometimes you need a delicious Miller Lite. Absolutely. Travis?
Sometimes.
I walked away from St. Arnold to what do you call it? Yingling for a minute there, and I came back to St.
Oh,
Arnold with
yeah.
their Eclipse IPA,
There we
which
go.
was their 30th anniversary IPA. It's got Eclipse and Citra hops in it. It's tasty. It's a good go-to. It's not going to be like your wow, I need to trade beers for that, but
Mhm.
yeah, I'm what's known as a checker. I tend to check off the beer I've never had, but I'm trying to not be less of a checker perhaps. So now I'll actually buy like a six pack of the same thing more than once.
That a
And
boy.
yeah, yeah. So one of my
I'm the
go-tos.
Dude, I am the exact opposite of a checker. I just really, I'm a creature of habit. I do like to try me some new good beer, obviously, but if I find a good one, in fact, I'm drinking the same beer right now as I was drinking the first show, a Faction Extra Pale Ale. You'll always find a Sierra Pale Ale in my fridge. Yeah, I'm not a checker. I find. I don't deal well with disappointment, Travis. And so when I'm living the checker life, I'm like, yeah, well, that one wasn't that good.
Right. No,
If I could interject my little thing, I feel like is I'm kind of more on the Justin side, but I would say that I'm always a searcher. Like I'm looking for that
Hmm.
one that just like I want to buy every day. And
Yeah,
I feel like I get to where like you find that one like you said and you're just like, "Oh, this is it. I got it." So
I
I'm
like
like
that.
maybe I'm a hybrid, I guess, because I get to where
yeah.
I get tired of the ones I've been drinking, but I don't want to just take a shot in the dark. So it's kind of like, I'm looking for, I want
Yeah,
fresh. I want the label to look good. I want the brewery to be reputable. And then I'm like, let's see how we do.
I think hybrid
Yeah.
is the right. That's what I was thinking when you started to say it. Like, oh yeah, you're
There
a
you go.
hybrid. I also like Searcher though. Searcher's just a cool.
Searcher.
Yeah. You're always looking for that gold mine that
Yeah.
you can just live off of forever. And you never do.
Justin, if you throw that trivia at us this time, Justin, about XPA, I bet we know what it is this time.
Yeah. Did you look it up?
No.
No.
We had the whole discussion on what yours is.
So yeah, I am drinking the Faction Trajectory XPA, which in Faction's definition of it is a strong pale ale. So the X in that case means strong. In my opinion, and I'm pretty sure the past, I don't have the best memory, but when XPAs were cool, I don't know, 5 or more years ago, I thought X meant extra pale, which to me meant extra low. I don't know.
Extra
Um,
light.
Extra
Maybe it needs
light.
to
I
be
guess that's what
pale
Yeah.
extra ale. Tell them to call it a PXA, rebrand
can't
it, give you some
say.
new kegs, and you'll put it on tap.
Yeah. Unless, of course, I'm wrong. I'm just going off of my memory, and maybe extra pale was always, but it's listed as a strong pale ale. And I guess, you guys know more than me, but at 6.3%, I guess that's a strong pale ale, right?
Yeah.
So, um, but it's delicious. Well, I would like to thank our sponsor of this Brew Strong and every single Brew Strong ever, Blickman Engineering, still with us after all these years, and so happy to have him. We just got to talk to Drew Barnes on the last show, the new president and owner of Blickman, and it was really great. I don't know about you guys. I had a lot of fun speaking with
Yeah.
him. Um,
Yeah.
I thought the content and getting that perspective is invaluable to brewers. So that was
Yeah.
awesome.
And we had some off-air conversations with him that I know we wanted to put on air. So we just ran out of time. So I'm stoked to have him back to talk about that, because he does have like a new unique vision for Blickman too. So I'm excited to see what our wonderful sponsor has coming. You can go to blickmanengineering.com and check it all out. If you're listening to this on a podcast, you're too late. But if you're watching right now live on Facebook, there are some Black Friday deals. So check out Black Friday, and you might find some sweet steals on some cool stuff like the Blickman beer gun, for example.
He won't put
Beer
that on
gun.
sale. It sells too well. That thing's outstanding.
Right. I do notice though,
This is
Mike,
it. This is all you need.
Mike, I didn't
Yes.
notice it until halfway through the last show because I'm a little slow, but you've got like a gorgeous anvil conical
Right.
fermenter behind you. Is that
This
what
is
it
the
is?
Anvil Crucible.
The Crucible.
I've
Okay.
actually won several medals making beer in this little guy.
Right.
I initially bought it because, didn't really want to jump into the $1,000 fermenter game, and this was kind of that good, like, let's see if conicals are where I want to go.
Right.
And like I said, anything other than spunding you can do in that vessel. So
Amazing.
I did IPAs, lagers. I did it all in this guy. I still use it to this day. So
It has the temperature control built in, obviously, because it's just sitting out.
yeah. So I don't know if you can see it, but you've got your coil
Yeah,
right here,
I see that.
and it's nice little. Everything's good, and then you get down. I don't know if you can see. You got your racking arm, and then you even got an 1.5-inch dump at the bottom. So she's ready to
got it
go.
all. That's everything.
Yeah, and it's about half the price of the Cadillac, if you will, of any brand. So
Of any
if you're
brand,
looking for that kind of hybrid, I don't want to do flat bottom stuff anymore, but I don't want to spring for $1,000 fermenter.
right.
There you go. It's
It
your
might
guy.
be unpopular opinion, but I like the shape of that style conical more than the shape of Blickman's, their prime line of conicals. I don't love the closing mechanisms. Again, theirs will hold pressure. I don't spund, I don't care. I like that shape more. I prefer that. I've used of that style, not the anvil version, and I've used the Blickman, their original fermenters, the Ferminator, probably version 1 and 2. I prefer this shape more. If I tell Drew that, he'll probably sell those for more money, and so I don't want to tell him that.
Yeah, it's a fine line. That's right.
I'm a big fan. Fanboy.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I still have, in fact, it belonged to Jamil, and I offered it back to him, but by then he had moved on to become a professional or whatever. But I have his Cadillac of more beer conical fermenters still sitting in my garage, unused. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say, for quite some time now. So that might have to get passed along, raffled off, prize winner. I don't know. We might eventually have to send that off to a Brew Strong listener, I feel like.
There you go. I think that is a great idea.
Yeah. Can't just go sitting there, going to waste. So, well, tonight is one of the great Brew Strong Q&A shows. And as anyone who knows me, I will not be able to participate in most of this unless it's about drinking or tasting or commercial beer or whatever. But I will do my best. But I'm here for moral support for Travis and Mike. Do you guys like to take a break before diving in, or you want to do a question first?
We typically take a break right now. We can go either way. The timing better than we do on how things end up.
Do you have like a not gonna take 20 minutes question on your list?
I have one that looks like it won't take 20 minutes. We shall see.
Let's go for it.
All right. So we start off with Nathan's question where we disappoint him greatly because he says Jamil and Palmer. And we have 3 gents, none of which are Jamil nor Palmer tonight. But Nathan, we'll see how we can do. Thanks again for all your help. It really is great to have a new brew day with more knowledge than the last. Yeah, we feel you on that one. It's outstanding information you get from the show. I just got a large stir plate that can easily move 6 gallons. I wanted to see what your thoughts are on this plate for aeration. I was thinking about using it for 30 minutes right after the pitch and 30 minutes for 12 hours later to make sure the yeast have the O2 they need. Does this make sense? If not, how would you try it out? So literally he's talking about using a stir plate on his carboy.
So that's what I was going to try to clarify. So when he says after the pitch, he means pitching into his wort, not like he's not making a starter here.
Yeah, 6 gallons. It could be a bucket, but I'm assuming it doesn't matter if it's a bucket or it's a carboy. He wants to put a stir plate on his fermentation and use that for aeration.
Mm-hmm.
So, couple things. If you're going to do that, I would think it's not going to work for that second hit because you're going to be in active fermentation and the CO2 will be like you got to think about direct, like like pressure pushes things one way, right? So like if you got CO2 in the beer, it's going to be pushing gas out. You're not going to have any oxygen in the headspace. The first right after pitch or right before pitch, I mean, it would work, but you'd have to make sure you do not put an airlock on it because then it'll, which all you're doing is turning over that surface and trying to homogenize the wort with the oxygen in the atmosphere. It's actually very inefficient, I would think, versus like splashing or even when you're transferring it in, if you can splash it while you transfer it. I mean,
it's the equivalent of splashing in a sealed environment, which some of us might have done in our first few batches. Now, this was 2011, so Nathan's probably done a few more batches since then. But in general, you might pull some air in depending on your headspace, but you're not going to pull a lot. And
I guess I would I would just ask, first of all, why not just properly aerate your wort and have your starter ready to go? I see what it sounds to me like we're looking for a reason to use a cool gadget.
Exactly. That's what I'm reading too.
Yeah.
Because
we all know there's evidence, we can look it up. A properly aerated batch of wort is going to do great with a properly started pitch of yeast, and you just let it go. If we're just trying to skip that sort of oxygenation aeration step with this cool gadget, I think the results are going to be mixed. And that's with very little knowledge of this topic. I still think the results are going to be mixed.
I do have the question of, you bought the stir plate that can stir 6 gallons. What does he do with that other than beer? I mean, there might be some massive science experiments going on that I'd like to hear about. Nathan,
I know, exactly.
Yeah,
what industry did this come from in the first place? Probably making much larger starters, to be honest with you. I don't know.
Actually, if I don't know, stir plate might be a little weird, but it'd be fun to play around with it, like for other things, like I don't know. I was thinking the mash, but that's too thick. I don't really know what you do with a homebrew application there.
Yeah. I mean, you know what might be cool? Well, I guess you don't want oxygen at that point, but people brewers like to rouse the dry hop nowadays. It's it's usually with a splash of CO2. So if you can rouse without, if you're in a closed tank somehow.
Yeah. So no, that's back to what Mike was saying. You won't pull more oxygen out, but that would rouse it. Caveat to that is if you end up with violent CO2 removal, you are also flashing off hop aromas and stuff.
Right.
So if you can turn it low, maybe.
I had a really cool idea, and this would be like you drop the stir bar in like your corny keg, and then let's say you make something where you're racking onto fruit, or you're racking it onto like a hef where you're worried about the yeast cake settling out of your beer, and then you gotta keep the keg upside down, and you're mixing this thing back up or something. That'd be kind of neat to have like your keg on a stir plate, and you're like kind of like you said, very low, keeping things up in suspension. That'd be kind of fun to play around with, especially like fruit beers and stuff.
Well, good question. All right. That gets us started. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've got more of your listener questions here on Brew Strong. Hang in there. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Brew Strong. I'm your host for today, Justin Crosley, along, of course, with Mike and Travis. And we are talking beer and your questions on a Q&A episode of Brew Strong. What do we got next, Trav?
All right, let's see if I'm gonna grab a medium-ish question. We'll see. Again, I have no good judgment on how long these will actually take.
That's all right.
Jordan back in 2011 asked, "Hey guys, I drive a lot for work. and have been using the time to listen to all of the back episodes of Brew Strong. I hope Jordan has continued because we've got another 13 years to go, Jordan, so far.
Yeah.
I love hearing everything you have to say and have changed a lot of my techniques based on what I've heard. One thing I'm having trouble with is getting the right hop aroma and flavor in my beer. I've noticed that you have covered hop bittering and dry hopping in great detail, but have only touched on everything between here and there in Q&A shows. I would love to hear an entire show about hot side hopping. So, Jordan, I'm going to disappoint you. We're not giving you a full show yet. But I thought between Mike and I and Justin, who thinks he doesn't have any input, who's had great input, we could talk about why maybe you don't hear so much about anything between bittering and whirlpooling and dry hopping. So his question, if I've read this a few times, Mike. I don't know if you had a chance to read it. He's talking about any addition post bittering that's still a hot side, a boil addition.
Yeah. Well, I
So,
can see
so just to
how.
clarify for me too, we're talking, some 30s, 30-minute editions, 10-minute editions, 5-minute editions, all of that, right?
He says aroma, but he means all of that from what I'm reading.
But he means all of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I
I
mean,
mean, 10
30,
years ago, that was an aroma
I
edition.
guess,
Mhm.
I guess you're right. Even 30 was 10 years ago, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Okay. All right.
Uh, so for me, I would push it all the way to 5, where you're practically whirlpooling it. But yeah, I mean, for me, hop aroma and flavor is all about layering. It's about building the different flavors by using the process to develop them, and late hopping, does give that kind of not just bitter. There's going to be more of a hop flavor to it. Maybe not so much aroma, but there will be more flavor than what you would get with like a first wort hop or a 60-minute edition, right? So um, I would say, you know, the big one for aromas that even if you're just doing boil stuff or whirlpool stuff is the fermentation and the packaging and looking after oxygen, yeah, uptake. My whole thing is you can have the best beer in the world in that fermenter when it's all finished fermenting, and if you screw up the transfer or you rack it into a keg with oxygen in it, or you're using tubing that exposes your beer to oxygen, you know, you're gonna have a bad uh, aroma experience. It's so quick. It's gone. I mean, I've had beers where when I was coming up in college and stuff, even at UC Davis, where we were making these beers and they're fantastic in the fermenter, and then by the time they got to be served or they were ready to serve, it's like, what happened to my beer? So that was my first
So
thought: is if he's starting out, take care of the oxygen first, and then
mhm.
assess your recipes after you've made sure that's not a problem.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would say that there's no exact science on which point in the boil will give you which aspect of your hop because the hops vary so much. And I don't mean you could talk about it, but I don't mean Citra from year 1 to year 2. I don't mean Citra from farm A to farm B. I mean Citra versus Mosaic versus Simcoe versus Amarillo. Every one of them expresses a little differently, sometimes a lot differently. So if you're trying to work specifically, you're not coaxing the flavor or aroma you want out of your hop, you're going to have to play with the times or know someone who's used that hop extensively and can tell you, I find that with this specific hop, this is when you want to drop if you want that aspect of it. So it's experimental on that. You can change your technique if you wish. I'd say flavor and aroma. You need to play with your whirlpool. You need to play with your dry hop. And don't oxidize it. Don't let your oxygen come in and steal those from you.
Hmm.
Um,
I would
Oxygen
only,
is a hoppy beer killer. Like if you're
yeah.
trying to make a hoppy beer, even a hoppy lager, oxygen will you'll be like, what? Why does my beer taste like nothing? That's the only way I can explain it is like
it'll wipe everything out.
it
Yeah.
just wipes it out. There's no nose on it. Like the whole profile just goes out the window.
And I know this question's a bit old, but I think Mike's right that layering is an important part of the brewing process. And we've learned now that the sort of middle editions, I mean, I know that there might be some brewers who still prefer that. But if you're talking about the difference between bitterness and aroma, which I think is where he was finding some challenge, is like finding the balance between bitterness and aroma. You're going to get that by just now adopting later editions. And I know the question is about hot side, and there's still some hot side edition. Like, okay, for me, you guys might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but to me, a Whirlpool edition is a hot side edition, right? Like if we're okay. So let's find your IBUs at the 60-minute edition. Increase your late edition, your Whirlpool edition, probably exponentially by the time this question is being answered. Add those IBUs too. That's also going to give you bitterness. It's definitely going to give you bitterness. And you're layering. This is the tricky part. So, Mike, I just love that you said that, because it used to be like, yeah, we have to do a 30 and a 10 and a 5 because we were layering that way. But now we're more layering, I think, with varieties than we are time. We're doing our bittering at the beginning, and then we're doing the punch at Whirlpool and dry hopping, and that's where we're doing our layering. What do you think?
So in terms of what I've found, and me and Travis has been running this experiment, and I'm so excited to hear if he's been able to tell any differences. There's actually a lot of discussion around the Whirlpool and the temperatures at which hoppy flavors make it to the finished beer versus are driven off by the heat. And there's a lot of kind of literature out there that hotter Whirlpools might deliver more fruity flavors because those monoterpene alcohols are water soluble, so they're not driven off like terpenes or sesquiterpenes are, that you might want to do in a cool pool or dry hop. So you can kind of select for the different flavors with the different temperatures. And then I always think with time, it's like with my IPAs, I actually don't usually do 60-minute editions. I mean, I will with the West Coast, but like hazies, I'll do a 40-minute. And I do a little, that's probably a 7-8 IBU by the model. I don't do any IBU testing myself, but to try to just develop that kind of at different the different amount of time that the beer is exposed to the hops might develop, or I believe they do develop the different kind of expression of that varietal, even like you're saying, when you do the different varietals. So like even in my dry hops, I'm using 3 dry hops usually at different times, 2 days apart, to try to you get that different level of exposure, you get the different flavor profiles and intensities, and then that builds a complex, interesting, different beer that I kind of have come to really chase, for lack of a better term.
We're even layering with dry hop now.
Remember, say again?
Right.
So we're even layering with dry hop now.
Yeah, no, you DDH, double dry hops, and all those kind of fancy. I think those actually contribute to more complexity in the beer, because the different amount of exposure and time. I mean, there's going to be different things that are dissolved at different amounts. So,
and I think that's the perfect way to modernize this question, because you're still dealing with time and temperature. You're just thinking of it from a different perspective. We're not thinking about it, and God, thank God I don't brew that much anymore, because it was so easy when I was just told like, oh, put it in at 15 minutes, put it in at 5 minutes. Like, it was so fucking easy. And now it's okay, well, what temperature is that Whirlpool actually? And how long are you going to leave that?
Well, so here's the crazy part. I will actually, with like the hazy that's in my tank right now, I actually did 2 different charges of Whirlpool at 2 different temperatures and 2 different actual amounts of the 3 varietals of hops I was using. So I did like a 20-minute Whirlpool at 185. And then at 10 minutes left, I had cooled down to 175. I added another charge of those same 3 hops at a higher amount, actually, because I was going to get less, bitterness, and I wanted to, kind of hit it harder. So like I'm layering these, even the Whirlpools, and then I'll do a triple dry hop here probably at the end of the week, where I start it, I dry hop it, and then I charge it again in day 2, and then I charge it again at day 4. And then that only gets like a day, and then bam, we're dropping the hops. So it's kind of, you get all those different layers that I'm trying to build. So yeah,
we're all of those. We're just now you guys have me curious. You have me curious. I was told back in the day, when you're working on a recipe, you change one thing at a time. Did you change 10 things at one time, or had you slowly been working up to these changes? Does
Uh,
that question
no,
make sense?
so I see my whole thing is I like to do a lot of research and I read a
Yeah,
lot and
I know.
I always
Yeah.
tell people I stand on the shoulders of giants. Like I didn't do these things. I read and I learned from Jamil and John and even Travis when he would be on a long time ago.
Even Travis.
Even
Even
Travis.
Travis.
Just I love you, Travis. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No,
Yeah.
I
I'm
love
just
that
trying
statement.
to I'm
That's
trying to
funny.
include everybody here, but what I'm trying to say is so like the double whirlpool was something that I got out of a book I read about. I mean, it's Scott Janish's new IPA. I tried that, but I had been doing single dry hops. Then I went to double dry hops. Then I was like, let's try triple dry hops. But these were always, like you said, single changes within sometimes even the same recipe. I'd just be like, okay, let's split this single dry hop into two. And then
Okay.
let's add kind of. So, no, I do recommend that. And because if you make a bad beer, you kind of want to know how you got there. But I would say usually there's so much experience to be learned just from outside yourself, so like you can kind of get a lot of the way there and then develop your own experiences after that.
Sure.
So
Yeah. That makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah, so I've got two statements that I think I can close this out on. One
All right.
is, Justin, if you liked your beer, that's all that mattered.
Yeah. Fair.
Facts.
Fair.
Okay. And,
Fair.
and two is a reminder that, Jamil had the evil cousin. Sorry, evil twin. He had evil twin. He had
That's
evil
right.
cousin also, but evil twin stories about. And they moved evil twin to a 100% Whirlpool hop edition,
Mhm.
and it was too bitter.
Right. Yeah.
You've heard him tell that story.
Yeah. Which is
So
just
yeah,
wild, right? But yeah.
yeah. So he probably got all the hop flavor and aroma he was looking for, and even more IBUs than expected.
Yeah.
Now he would have been whirlpooling at Heretic. He would have been whirlpooling warmer. I don't think he had the chiller between the kettle and the whirlpool. He did have
No,
a
I
four
don't.
vessel system, so he had a separate whirlpool. But his plate chiller standard was output of the whirlpool, and yeah, it was. I mean, and you're moving 37 barrels of fluid from one vessel to another. It's not fast, so the
Yeah.
whirlpool was not a short period of time. But yeah, he when they tried the evil twin as an all whirlpool hop edition, it was too bitter.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
All right. We got another one before break.
sure. We'll call this one a short. We'll see
Okay.
if it actually is short. Okay. So again, most of these are so we covered a lot of the newer ones on our last Q&A, Justin, and I keep trying to dig back in some of the old ones to answer as well. So we have another 2011 here.
Okay.
Um, at the time, Tom was a fairly new home brewer and hadn't made a switch to all grain yet. He has a 10-gallon kettle with a sight gauge to do full boils in while improving my process before going to all grain. In the book, Brewing Classic Styles, the recipes state a pre-boil volume of 7 gallons. What I'm trying to figure out is what that means to the extract brewer. I'm guessing the pre-boil volume includes steeped wort and base extract malts. But most extract instructions say to bring the water to boil before adding the extract. What is the best way to determine how much water to use per recipe based on the amount of specialty grains and base extract? Steep the specialty grains, add the extract filled to 7 gallons, and begin to heat to boil. Just use 7 gallons. I'm guessing the total water will be fairly close to 7 gallons, or what? I know eventually I also need to figure out my individual boil off rate to dial this number in for my system. But while learning, how should I start? And I know that was a very lengthy question.
Oh,
My
I have an answer for this that was valid then and now.
Yeah,
I think I'm
Beersmith.com.
on
Just go to
I'm just
beersmith.com
survey
and
says
download your free trial of the Beersmith brewing software, and
yeah,
it's going to do it all for you. It's just going
that's
to.
true. That's great advice. 100%.
And I'm only half joking. That is actually true.
No,
You need to use
yeah,
something like a Beersmith brewing software. But his other part of the end of the question there is super valid. He's got to figure out some boil off rates and stuff like that, right, guys? He's not going to
yep,
know. The first part of his question, though, pre-boil and post-boil, it doesn't matter whether you're doing extract or all grain, right, guys? You're boiling an amount, and you have a
right.
pre-boil amount of liquid, and then you have a post-boil amount of liquid. So if I'm understanding the first part, I don't know that it matters if he's extract or all grain, does it?
Yeah,
Well,
there's only a small amount of math because, sorry, Mike, because he's got some extract he wants to add late.
Ah, okay.
But if it's liquid and it comes in a half-gallon container,
Yeah.
reserve a half-gallon.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, my whole thing is with extract brewing, all of the making up of the wort is kind of done without a mash or any kind of like sparging, correct? So what they say when I have that book, Brewing Classic Styles, the pre-boil is kind of right before it starts boiling. Like you everything's done, you're about to start boiling. That volume should be 7 gallons.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you got to do to make up, and I would even say maybe like when you're putting all the DME or your LMEs or your specialty grains or whatever, kind of start maybe a little under 7, 6, and then you can make it up to 7 before it boils.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, his whole thing is trying to hit the right gravity in
Right.
classic styles.
Sure.
So that way, and then, with the typical, which God, even boil off rates, what should I do for boil off rates? Should it be 1 gallon an hour? Should it be, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, things like thermal load, vessel geometry, elevation, sea level elevate, your altitude.
The
It's
stuff that
like
used to drive me
all
nuts.
this shit like kind of
Yeah.
matters. So that's where you've got to do it yourself, and you've got to do your process and record it and kind of build out what happens on your system, because trying to design that or have somebody just give you a number is going to be a ballpark at best.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's kind of, at least at the end of the boil volume, is kind of more empirically determined.
Well, so what's the end of this question? He wants to know. So 7 gallons of total liquid is what I'm looking
Yeah.
for.
Yeah,
Is
the
that a
pre-boil.
yes? So yes, that's the answer. Well,
Yeah.
it's one
Yes.
of the answers. Is yes. Total volume 7 gallons is what you're looking for, right?
Right before it starts, like
That's
let's say you're at 200 degrees. You want that thing on your tick marks on your kettle to say 7 or be
Yeah.
right at 7.
Okay.
yeah. So and he gets concerned with the steeping grains, but the steeping grains should be pulled long before that. Specialty grains should be pulled long before that. Again,
Mhm.
if you're going to do a late, and Jamil would maybe correct me on this, but I see no reason to add any of the malt extracts late. Um, I would get my everything ready and start my boil and just focus on boil and hops and done.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I
I
wouldn't
would even
eat them.
say adding DME to a hot water, or
It's not fun.
whatever, is a great way to have a huge freaking
Yeah.
mess on your hand. So
Boil over.
I'm a
Yes.
DME cold baby. I know it sucks to mix, it doesn't want to mix, but then that's when you get it in there and then you heat it up and then it all magically just, no
I see.
foam, no crazy mess.
It doesn't
Yeah.
love mixing hot either. It clumps. It's not fun.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna modernize this question again real quick too. And I don't know much about this. I'm just gonna throw this in there. I just discovered More Beer has these new like very short brew process
Yeah.
ingredients that they've been working on for like a decade. And it solves a lot. From my understanding, I'm gonna do a show about it with Chris Graham here soon. From my
Tell me when I'll
understanding,
watch it because I
it
saw him talk about it, but I didn't follow.
it's supposed to be for people like us who still really love good beer, but maybe can brew in a super short time. And it's like so the reason I'm bringing it up is because I think it has to do with some extract. It has to do with it's kind of based on the old Australian kit in a can things where you went and
Hitting a
bought a
kilo.
can of like kit and kilo things. But they're saying that we've perfected this and you're going to make good beer by throwing it in a pot, heating it up real quick, and then you ferment. And so don't take my word on this yet. I'm just throwing it into this conversation because I just got like a note about it the other day, and I'm super curious if this is like, okay, we're solving these problems. Let's just make some beer real quick. You know.
My initial, from my experience and from what I've learned from countless
Mm-hmm.
titans of this industry, is beer is best when it's made with care and
I
time.
know. I know.
And
But these
So what I
guys,
could see is I'd love to taste it after they roll this thing out and like really
yeah,
see if the like you could get to a 7 or 8 out of 10, like a lager or something. That'd be
yeah,
amazing. But see,
that
my
would
whole
be
thing
amazing.
is,
I agree with you. A
yeah,
7 would be amazing.
like if you could
Yes.
make a 7 in an hour, holy crap.
No,
But
so
Totally.
like,
they
see,
rolled
I
it
always
out.
think those 8, 9, 10 level beers, those are going to be the
Uh-huh.
ones that I'm sorry, they're going to take what they're going to take. You're going to have to do things that take time and effort, and
Yeah.
so
No,
that's where
I've seen clips. They
I'm
don't come out with
excited.
medals on his shirt. They come out and say, "Look, we know it's summertime. We know it's hot. We're going to help you make a batch fast."
Yeah.
Justin, I think it's the same product because I see there every
You've
so
seen it.
often. They
Okay.
have every so often. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it because I'm not going to do it. Had I known you were going to talk about it, I'd go back and watch those videos.
Yeah.
But
Here,
yeah,
my
so
bad.
their point is not making the best beer. They're about we know it's
Sounds like
hot,
a
fellas.
7.
Yeah,
Sounds
yeah,
like a 7. And if I
yeah.
could make my own and it's a 7, I'll take it. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
And
just brought it up because it's back to this kind of extract processing.
yes, it is.
So
Mhm.
I want to see
It's
what it's
one,
like.
yeah,
So, yeah.
I could even see, I mean, with advances in modern science and technology,
Hmm.
uh,
No, that's what, and
I
I
could
also
see like
just
where like
So
they've
stuff.
really kind of figured out like if they could make these ingredients without excessive heat, and they
Mhm.
can do things like vacuum distillations and kind of CO2 extracts and really kind of, yeah, like you said, it advanced technology to
yeah.
produce these extracts and these kind of ready to add to water, just add water kind of deals. That'd be, I'm interested. So
It'd be cool. Just, it wouldn't maybe be my go-to drinking beer, but it would be my, you know what? I feel like brewing my own beer and I want to drink it and I don't have time and let me check it out. So I'll report back. I'm hoping to do a show on the session with Chris and actually brew one with him.
Nice.
And we'll see how it goes.
yeah, the interesting thing I'd be if you can take care of the fermentation and really like Jamil and John would say forever until they went horse. Uh,
Yeah.
your fermentation, if you can get a good, healthy, vigorous fermentation and produce that, I mean, I would think that you could be, yeah, a
Yeah.
solid 8, 8.5 out of 10 right off the get-go. I mean, maybe even with a really good fermentation with quality yeast. Who knows? I'm really excited to hear about how this turns out.
All right. I will report back. In the meantime, let's take a quick break. We've got more Q&A to do with you here on Brew Strong. So we'll be right back after these words. Welcome back to Brew Strong. I'm filling in today for my friend Jamil Zanishev. I'm Justin Crosley and hanging out here with Travis and Mike doing us a Q&A show, which I'm happy to be sitting in on and hopefully able to contribute here and there. I know we've got a stockpile of questions over the years, so it's fun to be able to get through them. You can still send your questions to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. And if you're watching live on Facebook right now, you can enter the video chat and put your questions in right there, and we'll answer them for you tonight. But otherwise, send them to brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com. All right, Travis, what's next?
Jamil, sorry, Jamil has guaranteed we are going to finish every question that exists, but the new
Nice.
ones come first, and the Facebook ones come before the new ones.
Perfect. I love it. I love Jamil. He's so committed. I
Yes.
must answer every question ever that's been sent in. All right, man. I've seen some of those questions. There is such a thing as a stupid question. So, no, I was watching a show last night. There's no such thing as a stupid question, only stupid people.
Stupid people.
So
Yeah,
please
whatever.
send your
Yeah.
questions in strong@thebrewingnetwork.com and we'll get it answered.
All right. My notes on Matt is I should read this with the proper British accent, which I won't. Because he's from the UK. Matt
Want me
Matt
to read
writes
it?
in.
I'll read it.
Read it with your Aussie accent there.
Yeah,
No, no,
exactly. Yeah.
I can do a pretty good, Londoner.
It's
Which
not
one
bad.
is it?
It's
It might become annoying, but it's not
question
bad.
14.
Not to me, but our
14?
English listeners.
Peter Simons will be listening on this and grading you.
I don't know. All right. Hi there. I'm a grain brewer from the UK, and I've recently discovered Brewing Network, and I've been listening for the archive shows. All right, I'm done.
All right. I have a few questions about yeast I hope you can answer. When chilling a starter in the fridge to drop yeast on brew day, is it better to decant the wort while it's cold and let the yeast slurry warm up, or let the whole lot warm up and decant just before adding it to the brew. All right, so that's at least question one. So he broke the cardinal rule of asking more than one question. Now, when stepping a starter up from say 1 liter to 2 liters, when the 1 liter, all right, so I think it's okay. No, the next one's let's answer the first one first. I think we can knock it out because the second one's already 2 parts. So decanting, which would you decant then warm or warm then decant, Mike and Justin? Justin,
Decant and
do
warm,
you
100%.
exactly?
Final answer.
Yeah,
Or decant and cool. No.
Justin's muted on us.
Yeah. Hold on. You want to cool
Mm-hmm.
the starter and then decant.
Yes.
Final answer, 100%. If I was
Yes.
at all ambiguous about that.
Yes.
Do you repitch, Justin?
I have done, yes.
Yeah, and so you probably did exactly what Jamil told you to, which is decant while it's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. And the reasoning for that is because it'll start to mix up a little bit as it warms. And so you won't be decanting that nice. I mean, you will be decanting some of the yeast that you don't want to if you let it warm first. While it's cool, you got a nice tight cake down there. And most of what comes off, you don't care about. That cake at the bottom is what you want. So, yes, decant cool. Okay.
Yes.
So, the second and a half question from Matthew, if Mike wants to take another stab at it, probably not. When stepping up a yeast starter, say from 1 liter to 2 liters, when the first liter has fermented out, boil up 2 liters in a separate pan, decant the spent wort from the 1 liter and add the fresh 2 liters, or put the yeast from the 1 liter in a container, clean the flask, and boil fresh wort in the flask and add the yeast back. This is while using an Erlenmeyer flask. In this question, he's asking to build up your starter, boil and add, obviously chill, add to your starter for second stage, or for some reason, transfer out of your flask, make the new wort in your flask and add the yeast back.
Yeah, we're adding to the original 1 liter, right?
Yes, that's what I would do.
With your first, if you've done things right, with your first 1 liter starter, you've already created a sanitary environment. And then if you've kept things right, you've kept a sanitary environment. Then you're boiling and making sanitary wort again to add to your already sanitary environment. I and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I see why he's asking, because sometimes that first sanitary environment you created looks like shit after your first liter of
Yeah,
like it kind of looks funky and you're like, oh, I'm just going to dump more stuff into here. Why don't I go to a brand new sterile one? And that's because presumably you've got perfectly sterile, nice yeast in your first liter. So you just want to add clean, sterile food to it. Is there, right? I mean, if we're in a lab environment here and you can be perfect at everything, then it doesn't really matter. But because we tend to just be in our kitchen and you've already created a sterile environment, let's just stick with that one. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah. My whole thing is, like you said, you make the 1 liter starter. That's completely sanitary. You decant off the spent wort. And then, like you said, you'd boil a second batch of wort because you're trying to keep alcohol low, right? You don't want to stress the yeast. So you're stepping. My thought would be, as long as you chill that in a sanitary way, like with a cover, let's say, you keep it covered. That's the big one, is like, as this stuff cools, you've got to have some sort of lid on it. Not airtight, because then you create a vacuum, but like put a piece of aluminum foil over it. And then I would think that is a great way to do a step starter if you really need that much yeast.
Yeah.
To go for it, because I know that. See, my method is I usually just I up the initial pit. I mean, see, that's the whole thing, is like how much you're trying to spend. If you're really tight budget, you can't have more than one pack of yeast or something. So yeah, but in terms of sanitary and not ruining your yeast, that's a great way to do it.
Yeah. The other thing here, and I, gosh, I would love one of our very yeasty friends to be on the show to help me with this part of it. But even though being sterile is so very, very, very important, we're still in those environments talking about one thing out competing another. And in your first one, there's this beautiful starter that you've made, this 1 liter starter. You've created something that's hopefully going to dominate all other things. So you're adding some food to that, and you should be good to go. as opposed to pouring it into a whole other environment and then a whole other wort. And now we are just potentially putting in things that can outcompete what you've already done, right? So in other words, even though yeast is fragile, and this is a question for you guys, even though yeast is fragile, it's not so fragile that as long as it's not being outcompeted by some gnarly thing that we put in there. What do you think about that, Mike?
So I would actually say, because like I said, I'm a water treatment engineer. I actually have a lot of experience with biological systems and stuff like this. Yeast is actually incredibly robust and it will survive. What you're trying to do is prevent the contamination or inoculation with bacteria that, like you said, replicates so much faster, is so much more dominant, and then produces so much more disgusting flavors like your butyric acids and your
Yeah, yeah.
acetic acids, your all these things that just taste terrible. Um, Heat is your number one weapon, and boiling anything will kill 99% of stuff in terms of what we're doing. And so, like I said, as long as the chilling of that second wort step is done in a sanitary way, the yeast will love it, and you'll be fine.
Okay.
But no, I actually would argue that yeast is this incredibly resilient. Think about you.
Yeah,
You buy these yeast packs that have been near freezing for weeks or months, and you throw it in your wort, and boom, it starts going again. These are little amazing creatures that
totally.
can totally come back to life or replicate at amazing rates. And the
And I
trick
guess
is,
that's what I'm getting at without misleading anybody is that treat it like it's the most fragile thing on the planet because that's going to be good for your beer. But
yeah,
know in the back of your head, you're going to be okay. Just do the right things. Just keep things sanitary.
yeah, sanitary is huge because the yeast will be healthy, right? So they could actually be growing in this wort and being totally healthy, but because they're now in an environment with something else that is producing terrible flavor,
Yeah.
your beer is screwed. So that's where you treat the beer as this fragile, delicate flower.
Okay.
And also take care of your yeast, proper nutrition, proper pitch rates, proper oxygenation. But the big one is things like bacteria and Brettanomyces, these things that just can, and diastatic yeast, God forbid, these things wild yeast, uh, will quickly ruin your beer. So
Okay.
sanitize.
Yes. All right,
Will
Travis. So I
do.
know you dropped out there for a second, but it just I think we covered it. I think we I don't know
Perfect.
if we nailed it. But we covered it. Mike has to do
Outstanding.
my input, so um, we got somewhere on it.
Sounded
What
like you
else?
knocked it out the park to me.
Uh,
You were very robotic voices. My computer shut down, etc. But it sounded really cool while it was very robotic.
yeah. Okay. Well, do we have time for one more, maybe, and then we can call it?
Let's see. I have a short one that involves the Huda checks. If you know the Huda checks.
I do know the Huda checks. I love the Huda checks. Let's do
Okay,
that.
so this is not from the Huda checks. This is from the Old Man Susan, which sounds interesting. Um, One of these years, you need to tape a show at the Huda Checks Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
If you think Andy and Joe have fun at NHC, remember they learned how from the old man Susan. I'm confused on that, but I don't. It doesn't matter. Now, what was it I sat down here to do? Um, More of a statement than a question.
Okay.
Did you meet their friend, the old man?
I I'm sure I have. Guys, I've been doing this for 20 years. So, I'm sure
Shows.
I have. I'm not so I'm just gonna say yes. But I do know that the sentiment of the question I believe in wholeheartedly. I've been invited to, as have so many homebrewers, if you used to go to the homebrew conferences, to go to the Huda Checks party. Apparently it's epic. It's a block party of all block parties. And at least back in the day, they would brew like 3 chest freezers full of homebrew. So I don't know how many, corny kegs that ends up being, but it's an awful lot of beer. And I've always wanted to go. And this is the perfect ending short question. You're right. Every Brewing Network show that's ever existed should record one episode at the Huda Check Oktoberfest party, because it sounds like an epic situation. I do think John Palmer has been once.
So for the people in the room that don't know what that is, where and when, or what is this?
Great question.
Huda
So the
Checks?
Huda Checks are these twins. There's these 2 guys from Michigan. I believe they're Yoopers, not trolls, for you Michiganders out there. And they would come to every homebrewers conference. And look, they're not famous like Jamil and John Palmer, but they should be, because they're just a blast. They're just fun guys to be around. Good homebrewers. They went to almost every single homebrew conference I've ever been to. So they're just sort of legendary in their commitment to homebrew, and that they're the epitome of the homebrewer that you meet that you want to hang out with, instead of the homebrewer that you meet that you don't. Tim, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. You met those homebrewers and you're like, all right, man. Yeah, I got it.
I'll see you later.
yeah. But the Huda Checks, you meet them for 5 minutes and you're like, oh man, all right. I see why your block party's so cool. And so over the years, they would invite everyone to their block party, and
Nice.
very few outside of Michigan, from my understanding, have been. So I think that's where this question is coming. It was probably, by the way, this question was probably sent in by the Huda Checks. If you think
undercover question.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, hey, how cool is our party?
Tell everybody that. Hey, it's like the one brother is telling the other brother, like, no, right, that our parties are super cool.
Yeah, totally. That is a very Huda Check thing to do. Absolutely. So great question to send in, and I think to rally for the end of the show.
Yeah. Very good.
That's another thing I'll report back on, because I'd like to go to a Huda Check party, and if I do, I'll tell you if it was all it was cracked up to be.
Take pictures.
Yeah. All right, guys. Hey, once again, thank you to our sponsor, Blickman. You can go to blickmanengineering.com. I think they're going to, in fact, maybe by the time you're listening to this, there's a brand new website. If not, very soon. And it's a new way of ordering where you can combine Anvil products with Blickman products, because some of those are compatible. And we learned about that on the last show. So check it out, blickmanengineering.com. Thank them for being a sponsor of this program. After all these years, it's been quite a while, and we just love our partnership with them, and it just keeps it going. Mike and Travis, I want to thank you guys, not just for allowing me to host with you guys tonight, but for carrying on the Brew Strong, man. I know that Jamil just appreciates you guys so much, and so do I. So it's been fun to sit in with you and do it with you guys. I appreciate it.
It's been a blast,
yeah,
Justin.
It's been awesome. Yeah. I hope that if Jamil's bum issues or whatever, I don't know, rumor mill,
right,
rumor mill, get better. If they don't, if they reoccur, then you can come back.
Right. Yeah. But that's a really great way. Jamil, we
rumor
hope you
mill.
get better, and then maybe your butt recurs again, and I'll be back.
Rumor mill. No, we don't know.
We really
What this is driving, though, is we need a new Jamil's Medical Corner when he returns.
We do.
So we can hear about what's going on with his bum.
Yeah, because we got to turn rumors into facts, right?
Totally. So maybe even if he can't do a full show, I'll just either record or have him chime in on a quick Jamil's Medical Corner.
Yeah, there you go.
Have him call in.
Yeah.
Like a real raspy telephone. I'm here live.
I don't know why his butt problems make him raspy, but you're probably right.
I don't know. Rumor mill. We don't know.
Right. Yeah. All right, folks. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out with us. And hey, we'll see you next time right here on the Brewing Network and on Brew Strong. Take care of yourselves and your beer.
Brew Strong, everybody. Cheers.
Brew Strong.